The Genesee River cuts through the heart of Rochester, New York, winding its way past factories, neighborhoods, and the city's historic downtown. For generations, its waters have been a silent witness to the city's triumphs and tragedies, shaping the lives of those who live along its banks. At night, the river's surface turns inky and impenetrable, its depths hiding more than just the city's reflections. Beneath the old bridges, shadows gather and the water seems to swallow every sound, every secret. Tonight, a heavy mist rolls in, thick and unyielding, clinging to every blade of grass and every twisted tree along the river's edge. The air is damp and cold, and the riverbank feels transformed, no longer a place for quiet walks, but a landscape of unease and foreboding. In the late 1980s, the Genesee River became infamous, not for its natural beauty or its role in Rochester's history, but for the terror it concealed beneath its surface. The city was gripped by fear as police lights flickered along the riverbanks and yellow tape fluttered in the night breeze. Whispers spread through the community, growing louder with each new headline. They called him the Genesee River Killer, a name that sent chills down spines and kept families indoors after dark. Fear became a constant companion in Rochester. He haunted these banks, stalking the foggy shoreline and transforming what was once a symbol of life into a place of dread. Arthur Shawcross, a fisherman, a cook, a man who blended in with the crowd, walked these paths unnoticed. To his neighbors, he was just another face in the crowd, a man who seemed ordinary, even friendly. No one suspected the darkness he carried within, or the horrors he would unleash. Moving through the night, Shawcross became a phantom, his crimes hidden as deeply as the river's own secrets. The Genesee, with its swirling currents, kept his deeds concealed for far too long. How could a man with such a violent past walk free to kill again? The question still lingers in the minds of Rochester's residents, a haunting reminder of the city's darkest days. To truly understand how this nightmare began, we must look back, beyond the headlines and the horror, before the river's secrets, to the origins of a monster. The answers lie in the past, in the childhood of Arthur Shawcross. This story begins not with a killer, but with a lonely, troubled boy, a child shaped by pain, neglect, and a world that never seemed to offer him comfort or hope. His path, marked by trauma and isolation, would one day lead to tragedy. The Genesee River, once a symbol of life and progress, would become the final witness to his crimes, a silent observer to the darkness that unfolded along its banks. Watertown, New York, 1945. Arthur Shawcross's story starts here. His childhood was marked by isolation and cruelty, bullied at school, troubled at home. He was a chronic bedwetter, struggled academically, and was often alone. Shawcross claimed abuse and neglect, but his stories blurred fact and fiction. Early signs of darkness emerged: fascination with fire, cruelty to animals, the classic warning signs. He dropped out of school, seeking purpose in the army. Vietnam changed him, giving his anger new shape. He returned home, his stories of war mostly lies, but the violence inside him was real. The awkward boy from Watertown was gone. In his place stood a man shaped by trauma and rage. The seeds of violence had taken root. Soon they would bear deadly fruit. The first whispers of violence were about to begin. 1972, Watertown. A quiet, unassuming town in upstate New York, where neighbors greeted each other by name and children played freely in the streets. Life here moved at a gentle pace, untouched by the chaos of the outside world, or so it seemed. Arthur Shawcross, now a husband and father, appeared to be just another working man trying to provide for his family. He blended in, his past troubles hidden beneath the surface as he tried to live a normal life. To his neighbors he was quiet, even friendly, a man who kept to himself but never caused trouble. But beneath the calm, darkness was stirring. The peace shattered with the sudden disappearance of 10-year-old Jack Blake, a boy known and loved by many in the community. The search for Jack gripped Watertown as parents clung to their children and fear crept into every home. Shawcross inserted himself into the investigation, leading police to the boy's body and claiming he'd simply stumbled upon the tragic scene. But as detectives pressed him, his story began to unravel, revealing cracks in the facade he'd so carefully built. Under mounting pressure, Shawcross confessed to the crime, then quickly recanted, sending investigators into a spiral of doubt and frustration. The truth seemed to slip further away with every word he spoke. Months passed, and the town's wounds had barely begun to heal when tragedy struck again. 8-year-old Karen Ann Hill vanished without a trace, plunging Watertown into a new wave of panic and heartbreak. Her body was discovered near the same riverbank where Jack's had been found. The chilling similarities between the two cases left no doubt. A pattern was emerging, and the community's sense of safety was shattered. Fear turned to horror as the townspeople realized a predator was among them. The once peaceful streets now echoed with whispers of suspicion and grief, as families locked their doors and watched their children more closely than ever before. Eventually, Shawcross pleaded guilty to manslaughter in Karen's death. The murder charge for Jack was dropped, leaving many to wonder if justice had truly been served. The courtroom was heavy with sorrow and disbelief. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a hollow victory for the families left behind, their lives forever changed by loss. The pain lingered, even as the legal process moved on. For a moment, Watertown breathed a collective sigh of relief. The nightmare seemed over, and the town tried to return to normal, clinging to the hope that such evil would never return. Shawcross was locked away, his crimes seemingly a closed chapter in the town's history. The community tried to heal, but the scars ran deep. Yet the justice system's decision would have consequences no one could have imagined. The sense of closure was fragile, built on decisions that would soon be questioned. The monster was caged, but not for long. Behind bars, Shawcross waited, his secrets festering in the darkness. The seeds of tragedy had only begun to sprout. The sense of safety was an illusion, and the true cost of the town's ordeal was yet to be revealed. And soon, another city, unaware of the danger lurking in its midst, would pay the price for decisions made in Watertown. In prison, Shawcross was the model inmate, quiet, compliant, seemingly reformed. He spoke of remorse, attended therapy, and convinced experts he was safe. But it was all an act, a performance for freedom. The system saw what it wanted, a success story. In 1987, after just 14 years, Shawcross was released on parole. Watertown's prosecutor warned, he will kill again. The warnings were ignored. Shawcross was relocated to Rochester, his past hidden. No one knew the danger living among them. The files on his crimes were closed, the slate wiped clean. The system's failure was complete, and Rochester was about to face a nightmare of its own. The predator was free. 1988 Rochester. The city was alive with the energy of a new decade, but beneath the surface something sinister was stirring. People hurried along the sidewalks, unaware that a nightmare was about to return. For a year, Arthur Shawcross blended in, just another face in the crowd, invisible among the daily bustle. He worked odd jobs, kept to himself, and no one suspected the darkness he carried. Then, the bodies began to appear. One by one, women vanished from the city's margins, their disappearances barely noticed at first. Dorothy Blackman was the first. Her death was dismissed as a tragic anomaly, a sad footnote in the city's police logs. But then more women followed. Patricia Ives, whose disappearance sent ripples of unease through the community. Frances Brown, June Stott. Each new victim was a reminder that something was terribly wrong. All vulnerable, all found near the Genesee River. The river, once a symbol of life and industry, became a place of dread. The city realized a serial killer was stalking its streets. Fear spread quickly, infecting every conversation, every shadowed alley. The Genesee River Killer was everywhere and nowhere. He haunted the city's nights, slipping through the darkness unseen. The media fanned the panic. Headlines screamed warnings, and women were afraid to walk alone after dark. Parents kept their children close, and the city's nightlife faded. Police formed a special task force, racing against time to stop the killings. Detectives worked around the clock, piecing together clues that seemed to lead nowhere. The killer left little evidence, moving like a ghost through the city's underbelly. Every search turned up more questions than answers. Each new victim deepened the city's terror. Candlelight vigils were held, but hope was fading. The nightmare that once haunted Watertown had returned, more vicious than before. Old wounds were reopened, and the city's past horrors became its present. The list of names grew, each a life stolen, each a family shattered. The evidence board filled with faces, a grim reminder of the killer's reach. Rochester was desperate for answers. The community demanded justice, but fear and suspicion clouded every lead. The hunt for the Genesee River Killer was on. The city held its breath, waiting for the nightmare to end. By late 1989, Rochester was paralyzed by fear. The killer's toll climbed into double digits, shattering the city's sense of safety. Anxiety seeped into every home, suspicion colored every interaction. The task force was overwhelmed by tips, most useless, all desperate. The killer became a local legend, a faceless terror haunting daily life. Law enforcement struggled, their leads few and their pressure immense. The city was a powder keg, waiting for the next tragedy. Investigators worked around the clock, haunted by the urgency of the case. The killer was still out there, and everyone knew it. Rochester was desperate for relief, for justice, for the nightmare to end. The pressure was building. Something had to break. The breakthrough came from above. A police helicopter spotted a man on a bridge near a crime scene. It was Arthur Shawcross. Calm and cooperative, he claimed to be fishing. But a background check revealed his violent past. Suddenly, the faceless killer had a name. Investigators matched his movements to the murders. The evidence was undeniable. Shawcross was brought in for questioning. At first he denied everything, but as the hours passed, his story crumbled. He confessed to 11 murders, describing each in chilling detail. He led police to his final victim, confirming the horror. The manhunt was over. The Genesee River Killer was caught. But the world still wanted to know what made him kill. The trial would try to answer that question. Shawcross's trial gripped the nation. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence and chilling confessions. The defense claimed insanity, blaming war trauma and multiple personalities. Experts debated, was he mad or just evil? Shawcross spun wild tales, cannibalism, secret missions, none of them credible. The prosecution dismantled his stories, exposing him as a manipulator. The jury saw through the act. Shawcross was found guilty on 10 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 250 years in prison. No parole, no second chances. The city could finally breathe again. But for the victims' families, the pain endured. Justice was served, but healing would take much longer. The monster was caged, but the scars remained. Arthur Shawcross died in prison in 2008. The Genesee River flows quietly now, but the memory of his crimes lingers. For Rochester and Watertown, the trauma became part of their history. The case exposed catastrophic failures in the justice system, a killer released to kill again. It forced a reckoning. How do we balance justice, rehabilitation, and public safety? We remember the victims, not as names but as people with hopes and dreams. Dorothy Blackman, Patricia Ives, Frances Brown, June Stott, and so many more. Their stories were cut short by a man who should never have been free. Their memory demands vigilance and reform. The mist has lifted, but the lessons remain. We must never forget the darkness that can hide in plain sight.